An instructor struggles to find a balance with her role online. She still has a difficult time determining if she is interacting too much or not enough. Even though her students know that she requires participation and grades their postings, some students still fail to interact, while others post opinions rather than analysis based on course readings and assignments. She then finds herself responding to every post, causing a decrease in overall participation. What are some more ways of ensuring quality discussion and participation online?
I think this one is an important concern of faculty. Now, tell me, what are some other ways of balancing and ensuring quality online discussions?
It's a very good question, Peter, and it's a very hard one as well. I think in the beginning it's very important for the online instructor or distributed learning instructor to be very proactive, meaning that they should acknowledge other students' postings if there's a discussion going on, even on, for every student, at least to make the students comfortable that, they have posted a good posting, that they are contributing. And then slowly as the course develops or evolves, then the instructor could sort of, loosen the reins a little bit and then allow students to facilitate discussions. What I do in my courses, I model, first of all, like for the first time we do an asynchronous discussion based on the readings, I model the whole discussion for a period of a week, let's say. I facilitate. And then I have the clear rubrics for them that I just mentioned, rubrics and protocols that guide them on how to engage effectively and meaningfully in an online discussion. And then I follow up that with guidelines for facilitators, and then I assign 2 students, again in pairs, to facilitate a discussion for a whole week. And then all students get a chance to do that as the semester goes on. So sometimes, though, too much structure might be too much, and too little structure might be too little. So this balancing act is very important. And as instructors get more experienced with using the rubrics, with teaching online, they get to a good fit or to a good place where they feel, they're not over sort of, contributing and not under contributing.
I think I really agree with a lot of what you're saying, especially about the need to sort of scaffold the interaction and then kind of remove some of that scaffolding and let students take on more of the responsibility. Keith, do you have anything to share on this whole issue of the balancing act that we're talking about here?
Actually, I do, Peter. One of the things that I get concerned about sometimes is when an instructor is teaching online, they haven't established a rhythm or their own presence or their own persona or personality, and I think that's important. They need to be able to actually identify that and work with that and establish their own, I want to call it rhythm or personality online. And also, one of the things that's a tip for me is that I try to do every time I respond to a student is instead of just giving them a yes or no response or giving them the answer to a question, I'll ask them another question or a leading question. A lot of people call them open-ended questions, but open-ended questions a lot of times don't do the job. So you have to figure out a way to ask them a question that has them go out and bring back some resources to the course, or ask them a question that has them deal with some other issues that are related to what you're talking about. So ask them leading questions to take them to another area that you want them to go into.
Yeah, I think it's key. I think what we're really talking about is the whole process of facilitating quality discourse, and that's not a real intuitive thing for everybody to do, especially in a new environment. Rena, how about, you have anything to add on this whole, I think, crucial, it's really the core issue we're talking about is the quality of online discussion.
Yes, and one of the things that we can't do is to assume that students understand what we mean when we're talking about posting, for example, a substantive post to a discussion. So providing them with guidelines for what participation needs to look like, examples of substantive posts, examples of what we mean by feedback, can help students to develop their skill at interacting in the online environment.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot to be said about designing for success, and that instructional design beforehand has a big payoff down the road as you were teaching that course, and posting those kind of guidelines is crucial. I think another thing that we're actually doing here is talking about how to reapply some metaphors that have been very successful in traditional environments. And one metaphor that comes to mind is curriculum as conversation. That if we're going to have high quality conversation and have students interacting and discussing in a sort of deep and sincere way, that these conversations need to matter. They need to allow for multiple perspectives, and they need to sort of allow for some controversy. So that curriculum as conversation metaphor sure comes to mind.